As a college student, one of the most important questions you can ask yourself and return to frequently is this: how do I communicate with myself? A part of that is the essential but mundane task of task management. How do you keep your assignments and appointments and obligations going? It can also be very high level. How do you talk to yourself about your value, your worth, your capacities, your limitations? These internal dialogues belong to a level of communication we call intrapersonal communication. Intra, I-N-T-R-A, means within, as opposed to inter, which means between. In this mini lecture, I want to suggest some helpful digital habits for college students, but I want to stress that these are more than technical tricks. They are forms of intrapersonal communication, messages you send to your present and future self. Intrapersonal communication is how you send and receive with messages within yourself. Intrapersonal communication is the ongoing dialogue you have within yourself, your self-talk, your reflections, the way you interpret experiences and make decisions. Sometimes people work with a mental health professional to improve their self-talk, the things that they say about their successes and failures, their traits and tendencies. What mental health professionals try to help us understand is that our intrapersonal communication can be intentionally modified to support our social, emotional, and spiritual well-being. In a similar way, you can organize your digital life in intentional ways that help support your long-term knowledge goals and patterns. And let me say, I've learned this both through professional life and through academic learning. I've also learned it the hard way because I've had to learn and relearn things that I thought I knew. As part of your move through college, you're learning things. Most of the students I encounter tend to keep their learning compartmentalized. They do what is necessary to get the assignments completed rather than considering how assignments can inform future classes and their professional life. What I'm suggesting in the broadest sense is that a better way to approach college is to think of yourself as someone building knowledge structures. You do this in your mind, but if you'll adopt specific habits, this mental knowledge structure will be reflected in the various aspects of your digital content. So, tip number 1, create a knowledge-based file system. If I asked you, how should a college student organize the files on their computer or in an online storage like OneDrive or Google Drive, what might make sense to us is to do so around semesters, fall 2026, spring 2027, and so on. And that is fine for turning in assignments, but it quietly says to your future self, this was just for that class. Organizing around subjects and knowledge areas instead sends a different message. It says, these are my core domains of knowledge. I plan to keep growing in them. So tip number 1 says that you begin to create a knowledge-based filing system. And as a side tip, I would say I have found it helpful to at least number my top-level folders. As a college student, I knew that the classes that mattered to me most were communication, psychology, history, English, political science. In my file system, I would have benefited from a file structure that said 01_communication, 02_psychology, 03_history, and so forth. This creates a stable map of what you're learning. Every document, note, assignment has a home in these domains. You're telling yourself this is not just an isolated task, it's part of a larger body of understanding that I'm building. I use this strategy for creating folders, keeping my professional life organized. I use the numbers at the top level. In some cases, I even have sequential letters numbering the subfolders. I can't tell you how much that simple habit has improved my capacity to find documents that I've worked on, filed, and then need to come back to. Another tip that comes from my professional world is that I use the same numbering system to organize the folders in my email client. Tip number 2, create intentional file names. A consistent naming pattern is another way you talk to your future self. Here's what I would recommend, but if you develop your own that makes sense to you, that's what matters. Consistency with yourself is better than conformity with another. But as an example, consider developing and following a basic file structure where the knowledge domain comes first, followed by the specific topic of the document, followed by the date in a format that includes the year, the month, and the day in numeric format, but as one numeric string. I also recommend using underscores to separate the three parts, and if any part has multiple words, to separate the words with hyphens. Again, the point is to be consistent. But my template would go something like this: knowledge hyphen domain underscore specific hyphen topic underscore year, month, and date. So a file name might look like SPCH, my abbreviation for speech, underscore values hyphen introduction underscore 2026-08-06, and then I might even add underscore V01 to remind me that it is version 1. By doing this, you're giving yourself a way to know what's in the document without opening it. You're also talking to yourself about how the information and ideas you've placed in that document fit within your knowledge map. From the perspective of intrapersonal communication, you're reinforcing your mental structures. Tip number 3, use styles to organize long documents. Styles is the term Microsoft uses to refer to its predefined formatting designations that let you develop a consistent look for the major headings and subheadings of the document. Now, my purpose here isn't to teach word processing, but I do encourage you to watch some videos about how to use and modify styles. Where this fits in with intrapersonal communication is that when you use headings and subheadings and tertiary headings, you're thinking about the structure of your thoughts. When I teach public speaking, I stress the importance of outlining. You can also use your word processor's functionality to see the document map, an outline of the document, and look for gaps in your own thinking. Styles give you an aesthetically consistent headings in your document, but it also lets you see the outline of your argument and move easily through the sections. That's intrapersonal communication in practice. Tip number 4, use a note-gathering application. I use OneNote, and I am absolutely committed to it, but there are other applications like Obsidian, Notion, Evernote, and Apple Note. Using something like OneNote gives you a central hub for the notes and lets you make your intrapersonal communication more deliberate. You might have a notebook for each of the top-level numbers in your file system, O1 communication, O2 psychology, and so on, with sections for topics, projects, and reflections. As you add lecture notes, reading summaries, and personal thoughts, you're building a record of how you've talked to yourself about these subjects over time. Tip 5, summarize whole thoughts from readings. How you read and record academic articles is also intrapersonal communication. A habit some of us developed as an undergraduates was skimming articles, chapters, and reports to snag a few quotations, glean some statistics, and just get the facts or whatever we thought was going to be on the test. Some of us never unlearned this habit, but some of us discovered much later in life that we needed to understand the whole shape of an article for it really to benefit us. Many times we're reading only to support what we already want to say, rather than truly opening ourselves up to new ideas, acknowledging someone's expertise, and expanding the base of our knowledge. I would recommend that as you read, learn to summarize whole thoughts rather than just snagging specific facts. I would also encourage you to use citation tools like Zotero or EndNote. These tools can help you create correct bibliographies, but they will also give you a place to put your summaries, notes, and key quotations. These become searchable later. So those are my 5 tips that I would give to incoming students to think about how to organize their digital life. But I want to stress that what I'm really talking about is how you talk to yourself, intrapersonal communication.